No one remembered who first noticed the Quartz shepherd dogs, though every grandparent in the mountain village of Lothal swore it had been in their own childhood. From the stone balconies that jutted like diving boards over the valley, the villagers would watch mists drift upward at dawn, and amid the shifting silver, shapes resolved. Lean, lupin figures with coats that glinted even through the fog. They looked like wolves carved from crystal, but they moved with the relaxed confidence of seasoned sheepdogs. When the sun climbed higher, the valley sky became their pasture. They barked silently. No one ever heard a sound, and the clouds obeyed. Curlicues of vapor coalesced into ships, dragons, shields, and crowned heroes, floating murals that melted back to formlessness. Only after every child in Lothal had lifted their eyes long enough to memorize the story. Adults said the dogs were made of quartz because their pelts caught every sun shard, throwing rainbows into even the darkest corners of the village. Children said the dogs were born from the mountain's heart, and occasionally left crystal paw prints that wouldn't melt until the first snow. Whether they were myth or miracle, the dogs appeared whenever a story of courage was needed, and vanished once the last lessons seeped into even the shyest child's bone. One such shy child was Mira Calder, 11 years old, set between a mother who spoke with the conviction of thunder and a father who could climb any cliff without a rope. Mira, on the other hand, found her voice grown tiny in her own throat whenever she needed it most. She hated the tremble in her hands when asked to speak in class, and hated, even more, the pounding of her heart whenever she imagined stepping beyond the village's stone walls. Still, she watched the Quartz shepherd dogs every morning before school. She would rise early, creep onto the balcony while her mother reheated yesterday's porridge, and wait beneath a knitted shawl. On clear days, the dogs herded clouds into armored knights defending a bridge. On foggy ones, they pummeled tarnished vapor into giant hammers that shattered invisible chains. Each time, the cloud shapes seemed to wink at Mira directly, as if saying, "Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it breathes quietly, but does not break." One spring week, the dogs shaped a thin swirl into a girl with hair like flames. The image hovered just above a crag called Widow's Leap, so lifelike that the villagers gasped. The cloud girl carried a lantern and faced a darkness that looked like more than weather. Something thick, hungry, not quite cloud or storm. The Quartz dogs circled the scene, pushing little tufts of vapor into spears glinting with imaginary steel. When the wind tore the story apart, the lesson lingered. A small figure can hold back a great darkness if she lifts her light high enough. Mira repeated that cloud lesson to herself later that day, when horrible news arrived. Her father, away in the next valley purchasing barley seeds, had been pinned on the far side of the high pass by an unexpected blizzard. The courier said wagons couldn't get through. The snowpack was unstable, and no one knew when the weather would break. The single road into Lothal curled along cliffs narrower than a cart. Avalanche debris had buried half of it. The other half trembled whenever so much as a raven landed on a ledge. Mira's mother tried not to worry, yet every night Mira could hear her stifle sobs behind the pantry door. The townsfolk whispered that the Quartz shepherd dogs might smooth the sky if only they could reach the storm. But clouds hugged the cliffs so tightly the dogs themselves couldn't lift them. At least, that's what the adults said. 3 nights after the news, Mira found she couldn't sleep. Moonlight poured into her room like milk. She remembered the cloud girl with the lantern and decided she would climb the ridge behind the village to the place everyone called the cloud pasture. She'd never gone alone. She'd barely asked for an apple without feeling her cheeks burn. Yet the idea settled on her shoulders with the gentle weight of an answer. If the Quartz dogs told stories of courage, maybe they could grant some. She dressed quietly, tucked her father's pocket compass into her coat, and tiptoed past the pantry where her mother had cried. Outside, The night air smelled of damp stone and thyme. The switchback trail to the ridge looked like a thin chalk line under the moon, faint but reachable. Halfway up, she encountered something new, a faint glow, as though the granite itself secreted starlight. When she rounded a boulder, she saw the source. 3 quartz shepherd dogs lying in the grass, asleep. Their paws were folded neatly under shining chests. Their translucent ears flicked with every gust. They reminded Mira of statues in the churchyard, yet they breathed. Inhalations rattled softly like wind chimes struck by breeze. For a moment, she was tempted to back away, let the legends stay legends. But the dogs opened their eyes, glass-clear and lit from within, and looked at her with a question only a heart could hear. "Why have you come?" Mira swallowed. "I need to reach my father," she whispered, and though the night swallowed much of her voice, the dogs stood. Dust fell from their crystal shoulders like shavings from a gemstone cutter's table. One, broader than the others, stepped forward. Moonbeams refracted through his body, painting Mira's boots in stripes of color. He lowered his nose to her hand. It felt like touching cool river pebbles. "Do you have a name?" she asked. The dog's facets caught shadow in ways that sketched letters across his flanks. Gleam, they spelled. She dared to scratch behind his ear. The surface warmed under her fingertips as though thawing. Then Gleam and his 2 companions trotted uphill, pausing to ensure Mira followed. At the summit, the world widened. The entire valley flickered with silver. Sky, valley, and mountain met in overlapping shades of black and pearl. But above the high pass to the west, rage brewed. A storm wall so jagged it looked mined from iron. Sheet lightning glinted behind it, sketching ragged silhouettes of trees shredded by wind. The quartz dogs regarded the storm like wary sheepdogs judging a pack of wolves. Their crystal tails stiffened. Gleam barked. This time Mira heard a sound, a chiming crack that echoed as though 2 wine glasses clinked in a cave. From different corners of the ridge, clusters of vapor drifted, summoned by that crystalline bark. The other dogs, Callus and Lumen, Mira guessed, though she never saw their names spelled, herded those clouds with practiced grace, nudging them left or right using only their shoulders and folded wings of transparent quartz that fanned from their shoulders. Mira hadn't known the dogs could fly until they did. With each bound into air, their paws sparked, and they lifted in weightless arcs, pushing clouds through sky like children arranging toys on a floor. The clouds responded as if happy to be shaped, a swirl elongated into a sword, a bulbous puff thinned into a winding staircase. Soon a luminous panorama glowed above the ridge. A mountain, a lone traveler, and wind so fierce it pushed everything backward except the traveler's steady lantern. Mira recognized the tableau at once. The Lantern Girl. But tonight's lesson expanded. The traveler climbed higher, lantern bobbing until she reached a stuck caravan identical to the wagons Mira's father used. The Lantern Girl planted her light atop a ridge. Its glow calmed the winds, melted the snow, and opened a safe path. The meaning struck Mira with such force she gasped. The story was a map, painted upon night for anyone willing to learn. Gleam stepped close. His facets shifted and formed words again. "Show us courage." He touched his nose gently to her chest, right over her hammering heart. "But I'm afraid," Mira confessed. The dog blinked once, then formed another sketch of letters. Courage is doing anyway. Lightning split the western sky, white and merciless. The storm wall rolled forward. Even from miles off, Mira felt static, raising hairs on her arms. She realized the dogs had not merely been telling her a story, they had been teaching her how to shape one. "Can you reach that storm?" she asked. Gleam's ears flattened. "Not alone? Then take me with you." She did not know if children could ride quartz dogs, but Gleam lowered his crystalline back. When Mira swung a leg over, sharp facets softened into smooth panels the way liquid glass might harden gently around a mold. Callus and Lumen leapt into the sky first, carving bright arcs. Gleam launched last. The leap cracked like a bell, and suddenly the ground fled beneath them. The ride felt like sliding on polished ice, a glide without friction, wind tangling Mira's hair, eyes watering. Cold bit her cheeks, but fear receded behind wonder. They skimmed over the valley, then climbed into bruised clouds that smelled of iron. Here, the dogs began their work. They wove between squalls, chasing shy wisps of vapor and butting them together like wayward sheep. Mira helped without thinking, leaning left when Gleam needed to pivot. Each motion sculpted massing clouds until they mirrored the lamplit traveler from the lesson, now scaled to titanic size. The traveler's cloud lantern blazed. Mira did not know how vapor glowed, but it did. Golden and warm, thunder roared. The storm retaliated, chopping at the cloud traveler with serrated gusts. The traveler wavered, frayed, nearly tore apart. Gleam barked commands, but a downdraft knocked both dog and rider off balance. Mira slipped sideways, grabbing at a ridge of crystal shoulder. The storm swallowed them. All she saw was grey. All she heard, the roaring of worlds tumbling. Finally, Mira said, "I'm fatigued." They broke through lower clouds, tumbling toward jagged obsidian dusted in snow, the ground rushing up like a reprimand. Gleam flared transparent wings, but an invisible fist smashed them. Shards splintered into the night, raining prismatic shards. Gleam hit a ledge hard, sliding, claws scraping sparks against rock. Mira slammed beside him. Rib-deep pain shot through her. Gleam's foreleg had cracked. Thin cracks marbled the quartz, pulsing faint light as though veins bled glow. He tried to stand and whimpered a tiny wind chime note cracking. Panic rose like bile. They were on a narrow shelf above a gorge that funneled the storm's wind. Cullis and Lumen circled overhead, unable to land. The cloud traveler warped, losing shape without Gleam's guidance. Mira's father was still trapped beyond that pass. The story must finish. She looked at Gleam, who met her gaze with liquid light inside crystal sockets. No letters formed this time. Pain made lines difficult. Yet she understood. The dog trusted her to lead. Mira touched the fracture on Gleam's leg. The surface was cold and wet from sleet. Her breath fogged. She removed the compass from her pocket. Its lid was polished copper, reflective even in dimness. Her father had given it on her last birthday with the words, "Carry direction inside you, even when the needle spins." The compass gleamed faintly. She wedged it carefully between cracks in Gleam's leg, not to mend stone, she knew it couldn't, but to splint his courage. She whispered, "This helped me find my way. Let it help you." Then she straightened, legs shaking. Above, a fist of cloud churned into a cyclone. She had to get Gleam back into the sky. The ridged shelf slanted toward an outcrop that rose like a diving board into emptiness. If she could coax Gleam that far, the others might grab him. But the path was narrow, slick with granite pebbles and ice. One misstep and they would tumble. Mira helped Gleam up. He leaned against her, heavier than boulders yet somehow buoyant, as if part cloud himself. Each step chimed delicate, tentative. Wind shoved them, dangerously. She crouched, arms braced against his side. When they reached the outcrop, lightning flashed, close enough to taste copper on her tongue. She remembered the cloud traveler raising a lantern. Lantern? She had no flame, but the quartz dog beneath her feet did. She knelt and pressed both palms against Gleam's fractured leg over the compass. She closed her eyes, searching for the trait she had lacked. Ferocious faith that you could matter against catastrophe. She pictured her father's laugh, her mother's silent tears, the lantern girl's unwavering step. She felt her heart drum, not as a frightened rabbit, but as a forging hammer. "Show us courage," she whispered, returning Gleam's earlier request. "I will." The dog's body brightened where her hands touched. Cracks filled with molten-looking gold light. Gleam lifted his head, barked a crystalline boom that shattered silence. The bark did something to the storm, staggered it, as if the squall suddenly remembered fear. Cullis and Lumen dove, grabbed Gleam's scruff with glittering teeth. Mira clung. They lifted together. Nothing seemed to carry them except belief and that golden pulse. Once airborne, Glean shook free of the other dog's grip, testing his wings. They had regrown, fragile still, edges ragged, but serviceable. The trio surged toward the battered cloud traveller. Mira guided with knees and whispered encouragement, eyeing the shifting gale. Gleam herded straggling vapours into place. Callus and Lumen reinforced edges, smoothing swirl into certainty. The traveller's lantern brightened, a miniature sun, yet the storm advanced, one last violent tantrum. It spat a spear of lightning at the lantern. Without thinking, Mira reached into space, grabbed at nothing, yet something coalesced. A shard of the broken wing Gleam had shed earlier. It floated like a falling snowflake. She snatched it, held it up. The shard caught the lightning's glare, refracted it into a halo around the cloud lantern, then burst into a fan of rainbow shards that embedded into the storm front. Thunder shrieked and fractured. The wall of weather fissured, peeled away, and roared off to the north in confusion, leaving the high pass beneath starlight. Wind calmed. The valley exhaled. A Gleam and Mira guided the cloud traveller to rest above the pass, where its light warmed snow into slush, revealing the road again. From high above, Mira saw tiny lanterns below travellers and wagoneers emerging from caves, blinking at the sudden calm. Among them, she recognised her father's red scarf waving. The Quartz dogs circled once more, shaping the last of the clouds into a single symbol, a small child standing beside a shining dog, holding aloft a shard of crystal. Every window in Lothal would witness that image by sunrise. Glim carried Mira back to the village ridge, touched down on the pasture where their journey had begun. Dawn bruised the east. She slid off his back, legs liquid. The compass remained fused in his mended leg. When he flexed it, copper shimmered and pointed toward her, always. She chuckled through tears. Glim bent his head until their foreheads met. Quartz to warm skin. "Thank you," she said, and although his mouth never formed words, she knew he replied, "As it should be." The dogs bounded away, dissolving with the brightening sky, leaving faint paw prints that glimmered like dew on glass. By the time Mira's father trudged into Lothal that morning, the whole village buzzed with stories. They said the storm had ended as abruptly as it began. They said someone had seen a girl riding a living prism. They said courage had a new shape now, not just knights or warriors, but a lantern raised by a child. Mira's mother wrapped her in an embrace so fierce it squeezed tears from both of them. Her father listened wide-eyed to her halting account, then pressed his forehead to hers in the same gesture Gleam had used. "My brave girl," he whispered. Weeks passed. Spring overcame winter. Crocuses pushed through thawed soil, and children resumed lessons outdoors. On the first clear Saturday, Mira climbed the school bell tower and, voice steady, told the village children her own version of the story. As she spoke, Quartz shepherd dogs appeared above, herding wisps into scenes that matched her words exactly. The children gaped, pointing. Mira realized, mid-sentence, that she was shaping the clouds with the dogs. Or perhaps they were letting her. Either way, when she finished, the picture that remained longest was not the lantern girl, but Mira herself, tiny yet upright, holding a glimmering shard toward the sun. After that day, people began calling her the Cloud Apprentice. It embarrassed her, but in the best way, warming her like a just-lit hearth. She still felt fear before speaking, but she also felt the moment when courage bloomed louder. She had learned that trembling did not cancel bravery. It proved she stood on unfamiliar ground and chose not to run. Sometimes, at dusk, Mira would hike to the ridge and find Gleam waiting. The compass still adorned his foreleg. The needle pointed north. But the dog never cared for compass directions. Together, they would watch the valley darken, then gather clouds for the evening's tale. Villagers below might see the forms overhead, heroes, lanterns, dragons, or ordinary children staring down storms. and smile knowingly. No one could say how long the Quartz shepherd dogs had existed, or how long they would stay. But the people of Lothal understood this. As long as there were children who needed courage, somewhere above, crystalline paws would still herd the sky into stories, and the most timid heart could look up, read a tale written in vapor, and believe.